The Boston Bruins training camp roster and schedule is set, and today we're going with some big, bold, beautiful predictions, including Nikita Zadorov being named next captain of this team.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, September 16th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we're doing some bold predictions on the eve of Boston Bruins training camp. And that's going to include Nikita Zadorov being named captain, Tanner Jeannot becoming a fan favorite, maybe even Pavel Zacha being traded. We'll also break down some perhaps more realistic camp battle predictions, focusing on Fabian Lysell, Fraser Minten, Joonas Korpisalo, and the Bruin of the day is going to be the aforementioned Lysell. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for 20 years. Like I said off the top, we're going bold here with some training camp predictions. Could Nikita Zadorov actually be named captain? Could Tanner Jeannot become a TD Garden cult hero? And could the Bruins really trade Pavel Zacha to the Montreal Canadiens? Then we'll bring it back down to earth a little bit with perhaps some more realistic camp predictions. Fabian Lysell finally sticking, Fraser Minten leading the Bruins in scoring in the preseason. Joonas Korpisalo being waived. And finally, we'll spotlight Fabian Lysell as our Bruin of the day. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Thank you again for joining me and making the podcast part of your day. All right, let's start with the chaos. Some bold possible scenarios that could come out of training camp. The first one, I'm going with Nikita Zadorov being named captain. Look, there's a reason why neither David Pastrnak nor Charlie McAvoy have been awarded, I don't want to say awarded, but have been promoted to captain. Both of them have A's on their jerseys as revealed in the jersey video that we saw over the summer. And both of them have strong cases to be named captain. They're both long tenured Bruins. They have become core members of this team, along with Jeremy Swayman, two of the three most important players on the team. Both have been molded, shaped, influenced, taught by Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand. But neither one has really been able to take the mantle of leadership and kind of be the no-brainer choice for next captain of this team. Now, a lot of it has to do with Marco Sturm not yet having run a practice and not having time to get to know these guys too in-depth on or off the ice. But I think what we are going to see here as camp begins is that as the Bruins try to reset the culture, they might pinpoint a guy who was pretty vocal down the stretch last season, who is clearly a strong personality, vocally, physically. He embodies toughness, accountability, and leadership. And this would probably shock everyone. But Sturm and Sweeney might reset the culture with a new voice. It would be a real shift, as you know, the previous captains were, well, not in the case of Chara, really. He came in, was named captain, held that role for over a decade. It immediately went to Bergeron naturally. Marchand was a bit off the board. Zadorov would be kind of resetting that big Z mentality, right? He's not Zdeno Chara, but it would be kind of a more recent signing, a stalwart on the blue line, and somebody who you could just look at this guy and see that he has natural leadership abilities. It would take some of the pressure off both Pastrnak and McAvoy. So that's my first big bold prediction for the Bruins. Nikita Zadorov being named captain. What do you think? Fans might be split. Could kick off a bit of a media storm, but it would allow McAvoy, Pastrnak to thrive in their roles and allow a relative newcomer who was clearly not happy with not making the playoffs last season, face the media day in and day out, tougher skin, and really kind of usher in this new, hopefully successful era of Boston Bruins hockey. My second bold prediction is that Tanner Jeannot becomes a fan favorite. I asked for some of your big questions heading into training camp, and one of them was still the head-scratching decision to sign Tanner Jeannot to 5 years for a $3+ million AAV. 3.4 to be exact, for at best a third line winger. Do they see him as something more? Maybe trying to catch some of the magic of his rookie season where he scored 20 goals. Look, the Bruins and their fans love grinders. Sean Thornton, PJ Stock, Milan Lucic back in the day. Jeannot hits, he fights, he plays hard, and a couple greasy goals in the preseason, and the criticism of that signing is going to start to change. Now, I'm not out here to say that this signing is going to look like, a steal in this offseason, because as Cam Stewart said last week on the podcast, like, who was Don Sweeney bidding against when he gave him 5 years, $3.4 million? You could see him maybe going long on term, keeping the AAV down, or going 3.4 to sign him for a couple years, but to give him both, a little insane. But this guy could become a glue guy cult hero for the Boston Bruins. And, we already have Mark Kastelik, who kind of fills that role. I think Jeannot has a bit more to prove, certainly, after hearing all the talk this past offseason about why did they sign this guy, what were they thinking. He does have a 24-goal season back in 21-22, 130 penalty minutes. If he can bring both that scoring pop and the physicality, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to become a Bruins fan favorite. All right, third bold prediction, Pavel Zacha trade chatter gets real. There's increasing reports that, and this is from, Jimmy Murphy, rg.org, or whatever his website is, the Montreal Canadiens are hot after Pavel Zacha, as are the Calgary Flames. And that kind of ties into our discussion yesterday. Everydayers will remember my thinking behind perhaps trading Zacha for Rasmus Andersson. This would be the first roster player trade with the Habs since 2001. Names linked include Joshua Roy, Oliver Kapanen, Jaden Struble. Not imminent, but if somebody pops in training camp, like a Fraser Minten or a Fabian Lysell, we'll discuss both of those guys here coming up, perhaps you see a situation where they decide, well, maybe let's cash in on Zacha. Both Kapanen and Roy would be fantastic additions from the Montreal Canadiens. Both can play center. Kapanen was a second-round pick in 2021. Joshua Roy was a fifth-round pick, but his status has really elevated. This isn't imminent, but again, could heat up as training camp begins. Trading him to Montreal would supercharge this rivalry. And it would help them save some cap space to maybe add later, or just have that flexibility for going on in the season while adding some younger players. Trading him to Montreal would be pretty shocking. They're in line for a second line center. I'm personally hoping Kirby Dach pops there because I have him on my keeper fantasy team. But that would be a pretty big swing for both the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. And it would be prompted by some surprises in training camp. And look, even if none of these happen, the fact we're even talking about them tells you how unpredictable this camp could be. Coming up, we're going to bring it back down to earth a little bit. Some realistic training camp predictions, battles that could actually shape Boston's roster. We'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. The NFL season is well underway, and FanDuel is giving you an incredible opportunity to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. People love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, same game parlays, jumping in live as action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Hit on your first $5 bet, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Thank you again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Everydayers know it's free and available in your podcast app and on YouTube. Please do hit that subscribe button if you have not already. All right, let's dial it back a bit from the bold chaos and focus on the storylines that are actually most likely to play out at Bruins camp. Although the Zadorov for captain one, I'm increasingly becoming not convinced, but it's definitely possible. These are battles and performances that will shape the opening night lineup. For me, Joonas Korpisalo getting waived is going to happen. Jeremy Swayman, we all know, is the clear number one, and I expect him to come out as strong as ever to prove to all of us that he is the number one option for this team. Behind him, there's Joonas Korpisalo, Michael DiPietro. Korpisalo stepped up a bit last season when Swayman was struggling, but he also struggled in his own right. Carries a cap hit the Bruins may not want to keep up, especially if it means having to try to put Michael DiPietro through waivers. If Korpisalo looks even remotely shaky in camp, it's going to be decision time pretty quick. Michael DiPietro is 26, coming off a solid AHL season where he was named goaltender of the year, and he's hungry for a real NHL shot. Waiving Korpisalo would send a strong message that it's Swayman's team, Swayman's crease, and also that DiPietro has earned his shot to be an NHL backup and to get some regular NHL starts. Look, we already see Korpisalo as a bit of a weak link, as a bit of a cap overspend. Still no idea why they really felt the need to A, trade Ullmark, and B, have to bring Korpisalo back even at just 75% with Ottawa retaining 25%. Cutting bait now, it'll cost the Bruins a bit in terms of the cap, but it would be a popular move because most of us want to see DiPietro get a shot. We do not want to see DiPietro scooped off waivers for nothing. So that's kind of a bold move to just try to bury a veteran goaltender, making $3 million, but consider the alternative. You're either carrying 3 goalies and Korpisalo was already not content with the amount of starts he got, or you're risking waiving DiPietro, and he would certainly be scooped. And that's just not going to happen. Second prediction, Fraser Minten will lead the team in preseason scoring. He's known for his maturity, responsible game. He's not super flashy, but he's smart, strong on the puck, and can chip in offensively. Saw him at the Prospects Challenge. He was clearly the best or more mature-looking Bruins prospect on that roster. He's going to put up some points in scrimmages, the preseason, and it will force Boston's hand to give him a fairly prominent role. There's competition at center where seemingly Elias Lindholm, Casey Middlestat are locked in 1-2. Zacha's still here for now, but the trade chatter does linger, and that could be a move they make. John Beecher, Georgi Merkulov, John Farinacci, Marat Husnudinov, all battling for bottom 6 spots, as are Sean Corrali, Michael Eyssimont. Minten leading the team in scoring will make him too valuable to cut, even if he's waiver exempt. Even if Boston doesn't want to rush him, he's going to prove that he belongs in the opening night lineup, whether it's on the third line center position, playing with Husnudinov and, well, perhaps Fabian Lysell if they want to go young, or Tanner Jeannot. If Minten pops, and I believe he will, Boston suddenly looks a little deeper down the middle. Maybe they trade Pavel Zacha and go with Middlestat, Minten, Arvidsson on the second line to give them a bit of flexibility there, as Minten and Middlestat can both play center or wing. You go with Lindholm, Middlestat, Minten, throw Matt Poitras in the mix as well. I think to a certain degree, Minten has kind of jumped over him on the depth chart. So I'm assuming Poitras will start the season in the AHL, but who knows? I'm giving the edge to Minten, who's going to lead the Bruins in preseason scoring. And my final bold prediction is that Fabian Lysell is finally going to stick with this team. The Bruins badly need more speed and skill on the wing. David Pastrnak just cannot be the only high-end creator. Why Lysell fits? He's got the wheels, the hands, the offensive instincts that few players in this system can match. Look, we all know he's been inconsistent in Providence, sometimes floating on the perimeter. He's also battled some injuries that have slowed his development. But this year is different. He's had a full, healthy summer, and he's coming off a confidence-building run to end the season with the Boston Bruins, which culminated in him getting like 3 points in 4 games to end the season and scoring his first NHL goal. Marco Sturm, Don Sweeney emphasizing competition and earning your spot. And that's going to motivate Lysell more than a safety net in Providence. If he gets sent down to Providence, you might as well just package him or say, okay, this probably isn't going to happen. The roster has open competition for middle 6 roles. Matej Blumel, Alex Steves, Michael Eyssimont. Who Lysell plays with in scrimmage and preseason games will kind of dictate this. If he's paired with Middlestat or Lindholm, the Bruins may be testing him in a real top 9 scenario. Maybe you go Lysell on the second line with Middlestat and Arvidsson so that he's got some more established veterans. Although maybe you don't want to put Lysell with Middlestat, who's not the best 200-foot game. So maybe you go experiment with Lysell playing with Lindholm. Get some of that Swedish magic going. All I know is that this is Fabian Lysell's final chance to impress at Boston Bruins training camp, and I truly believe he is going to stick. And that's why I'm actually making him the Bruin of the day. We'll get to that here in a moment. But these are some of the stories that will actually shape Boston's opening night lineup. Does Lysell finally make it? Does Minten pop enough to stick around? Is Korpisalo waived? These may not grab headlines like Zacha being traded to the Canadiens, Nikita Zadorov being named captain, Tanner Jeannot becoming a fan favorite, but they'll go a long way in telling us what kind of team the Bruins will ice this season. And let's talk a bit more about Fabian Lysell here as today's Bruin of the day when the podcast continues. Are you a business owner who just realized you need to hire someone like yesterday? The best way to find amazing candidates fast is Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've actually been in that spot myself, working for a company that needed to hire ASAP. The pressure was on. Every day without the right person was a setback. And that's where Indeed's sponsored job came in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right away. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, the Bruin of the day today, and this is a segment we are doing new this season, beginning last week, is Fabian Lysell. And Fabian Lysell is a huge name to watch in training camp because it's a pivotal opportunity or a pivotal time in his life. If he does not stick, and the reasons why he hasn't stuck so far are, injuries, inconsistency, the fact that there just hasn't been really a spot for him. Those are all concerns for his ability to finally crack this team. And we all know his history and his profile. He's a guy that, of course, was drafted in 2021. First-round pick for the Boston Bruins. And he's a guy who brings blazing speed to this lineup. He brings creativity, and he brings the potential for scoring. The Bruins pledged this offseason that they wanted to evolve offensively, and he's the kind of next era player that could do that. Blazing speed, slick hands, offensive creativity. Drafted in the first round and once seen as the future of Boston's top six. He's had concussions, nagging issues that have slowed his development. He too often disappeared in Providence games, especially outside of his own or outside of the offensive zone, drifting to the outside instead of driving play, failing to get back to help the defense. The Bruins have also had a preference for veterans in middle six roles. That was proven once again this July when they went out and signed Sean Kuraly, Michael Eyssimont, Tanner Jeannot. A full summer of training has given him a chance to come in at 100%, as well as that confidence boost that he got from playing for the Bruins down the stretch. The Bruins have real roster battles on the wing, and nobody's locked in behind really David Pastrnak, Morgan Geekie, Victor Arvidsson probably. But he too could fall down to like a third line role if he doesn't come in optimal health. Marco Sturm is stressing competition, and if Lysell shows he can impact games, Sturm has no loyalty to past decisions. He's coming in with fresh eyes, and let's say Lysell skates with Mittelstadt, Lindholm maybe even gets a look on the top line, it's a sign Boston wants to give him a fair shot. He should stand out as one of the fastest, most skilled guys on the ice in practices and scrimmages. Once the preseason starts, if he's putting up points and generating scoring chances while not being too easy to play against in the neutral and defensive zones, he's going to be a tough cut. And if he sticks, the Bruins instantly add a top 9 winger who brings speed, creativity to a forward group that badly needs it. He doesn't have to be a star right away, just an everyday NHLer who can push play and drive things offensively. In a best case scenario, Lysell is a breakout candidate in the NHL and makes Don Sweeney's job a lot easier when perhaps some pressure builds or when it comes to, hey, your draft record, this was a miss. Well, let's turn it into a hit. Fabian Lysell is the perfect swing player for this training camp. If he pops, the Bruins have a higher ceiling than people think. If he doesn't, it's another year of waiting and hoping and also questioning management's previous decisions and especially their draft record. For a team that finished last in the East and hit on James Higgins, they can't afford to go into this draft with people questioning their previous draft decisions. They also can't afford to continue to waste David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, and Jeremy Swayman's prime years. And that's why a guy like Nikita Zadorov could be the perfect fit for captain because he could really push some buttons and get the most out of this team. All right, that's it for today's big, bold, beautiful prediction episode for training camp. It all begins tomorrow. You're going to want to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so that you do not miss a single episode. Check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. News from all over the league from our local experts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.